You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast on shockwaveskullsessions.com. And now your host, Bob Nalbandian.
Shockwave Skull Sessions. Great cast. We got the one and only John Book. You like the way I say that? Punch in the sky. John Book. You got to do that. John Bush from Armored Saint, of course, is our one guest. And our second guest is the one and only That Jamieson from That Metal Show, comedian extraordinaire. And you got a new show on Kubia's network.
Media, That Jamieson Show. So
That Jamieson Show.
That's
right
awesome.
on.
I couldn't afford the other guys to bring them over with me, so it's just me for now. But been having amazing guests on the show. John came on to promote the new phenomenal Armored Saint album, Punching the Sky, which is still my favorite euphemism for pleasuring yourself.
Well, there's that metaphor as well.
I never thought of that.
I was punching the sky.
Yeah, I was punching the sky. Anyway, you know, that's pretty funny.
That's
my
right.
own interpretation. I don't represent the band, so.
So Kumia moved, right? Or isn't he moving to like North Carolina or something?
Yeah, getting out of New York, man. It's you know, from what I'm hearing from you guys on the West Coast, especially Los Angeles, pretty much the same. It's like The Walking Dead there, man. Just everything's shut down, or everything's out of business, and crime is spiking. So a lot of people flee in New York, man. It's crazy. I live at the beach, and they're buying up these townhomes and stuff, you know, where I live for like, you know, $100 grand more than the asking price, because people just want to flee the city, man. It's crazy time, man.
That is
insane.
Yeah.
So are you going to move as well, or that's a long travel for you to go to the studio?
I have too much vinyl to move. My vinyl collection is too big. It makes moving not a possibility for me.
Ah, there you go. Still got the old school vinyl collection. So John Bush, so you're just chilling out. Any news with Armored Saint? I know you did that killer whiskey show. And you got anything else going on in the meantime?
What we're doing right now is Joey is actually mixing the eventual live DVD/record of the Symbol Salvation shows and tour that we did, which hopefully will come out maybe in the fall. We never really had a proper DVD of a concert. So we filmed a bunch of shows, and this one is primarily going to be the New York show that we did, which was at the Gramercy, I believe. And it'll be cool. It's sounding great, and we just have to work on the video part of it. But the audio sounds awesome. Joey, does a great job, of course, with everything he does. So that'll be a really cool thing to do, because it was fun to do that tour and hear it back and stuff is great. So that'll probably be the next part of a piece of product that Armored Saint puts out, and then eventually we want to play some new songs.
Right on. Oh, let's get started on this. I figured we'll just kind of talk metal, man. Talk some classic metal. Some of our, I know we all kind of grew up on the same kind of classic metal. So I said, just pick 5 records that you thought you want to discuss. Some records that influenced you as a young teenage boy. Growing up metal. And let's start. I guess it doesn't need to be in any particular order. I decided, to do all 70s, and I decided, I was telling John, I just did all studio records because, just my pick, because we had done a previous one on live records. So I just picked studio records, and I didn't want to do 2 of the same band. Like I could have had 3 Black Sabbath records in my thing, but I decided to do 1 of each. So anyway, let's start. Let's go ahead and start with you, John Book. Go ahead and discuss.
Oh, I forgot my list.
Oh, I think I kind of remember your.
Oh, we didn't.
List.
I didn't write it down like a dummy.
Right? I think you
organized.
Well, I can start if you want, while John.
Go ahead, Don.
Asking me about some records. Okay, yeah, let's start with Don.
Well, Bob, no, you're 100% right. Like 5 classic albums, like, you know, just in the A section alone of my collection, I could have picked 5 classic records, right? So it was so tough. But of course, since I was in A, and
all right, yes,
displaying the vinyl. This is a good thing of Power Age.
Awesome.
Or Power Age. That's always been a thing. What's the correct pronunciation? I always call it Powerage.
I think it is Powerage. Yeah, most people call it Powerage. I think the band has called it Powerage when they talk about it. So, but it kind of could have that double meaning too. The Power Age, Power Age.
And it's weird. Hold up the cover again there, Don. So why is the GE in the different color there? Is there some kind of something symbolic about the different color of the GE?
I never thought of that.
No.
I mean, because if it was Power Age, maybe that would be age would be orange. Maybe they were giving a props to General Electric.
That could be. Maybe they got an endorsement deal with them.
Maybe they did.
You never know.
Little corporate money for Angus.
Yeah, early on they were thinking that. Wow.
Yeah, you never know. But, well, maybe I was going to say Germany, but that's DE for Deutschland. Right, so, because this is a German pressing. But hey, look, I mean, there was a point when we were doing that metal show where I guess I said on the show, you know, this is, to me, maybe this is the greatest rock and roll record ever, greatest hard rock record ever, and somehow it ended up in the Wikipedia listing of this album that I had said that. So I'm going to stick to my guns and say it again. You know, this album from top to bottom, there's not a dull moment. There's not a bad note. There's not one clunker on this album. Obviously, everybody knows Sin City. You know, Gone Shooting was in the Beavis and Butthead movie. But, you know, even the deep cuts, What's Next to the Moon. And
I love that song. I love that song.
There's nothing wrong with this album. It really is.
Kicked in the teeth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Riff Raff is such a great song too.
One of my favorites.
With Riff Raff, and you know, you're right on the money with that one. That one is such a great album. It's just and it's so powerful. You know, it's so raw and powerful. It's awesome.
Yeah, great production. You're in good company because I think also on Wikipedia, Keith Richards says it's his favorite album.
Oh, wow.
So there you go. Keith Richards, Don Jamieson, you know. Cool. You're pretty good company there, John. Anyway, I agree with you fully. That's probably, you know, I always go back and forth between that and Let There Be Rock. I kind of like Let There Be Rock because it's just start to finish, every song in your face, and just the raw production and the guitar tone it's so raw. And so when that came out in like 77, people didn't know, is this punk rock? Is this metal? It was like so new and exciting. But then Powerage just came out, and just the songs, you know, you talk about Sin City, Rip Rap, you know, Kicked into Teeth, What's Next to the Moon, all the Gone Shooting.
Down Payment Blues.
Down Payment Blues. What a great song. Great lyrics. I mean, phenomenal lyrics from Bon Scott. Yeah. He just shines on it. The production's great. It's got that it's got that great combination of the bluesy feel, like I say, Down Payment Blues, and just a really great album. Gone Shooting.
Because after you've just been pummeled by like the first 6 songs, and then Shooting comes on, and you're just sort of like, yeah, let me just groove to this. It's like you're smoking a joint, and then, all right, now back to the whiskey for the rest of the album. So yeah, it gets you, you know, it's like a shot of steroids, then you cool down for a little bit, and then you take that last ride right through Kicked in the Teeth. And you know, I know that Brian Johnson, you know, obviously he's always embraced the Bond stuff. I remember years ago, you know, they put What's Next to the Moon into the set because Brian really wanted to sing that one live. So it's good that even some of the deep cuts have still found its way back into the AC/DC set.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think that they opened in America for Aerosmith on that album.
And saw that tour, right?
I did not go to that show. Some of my good friends did, Henry and some other people, because they were they were actually more into Aerosmith. I don't even know if they knew AC/DC at that point. But then AC/DC came on as a support act, and they tell the story as like, who the hell is this band? And holy cow, because the intensity was just unbelievable. And then, you know, the next album was Highway to Hell, and then, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. I wish I went into that show. It's one of those shows among a few that I'm just like, oh, why didn't I go?
But you did see the Highway to Hell tour, right?
I did see Highway to Hell tour.
Oh, but you were on an acid trip during that, I remember.
I was not on an acid trip. Somebody offered me a hit of a joint, and I took one hit, and then I mean, I don't know what it was. It could have been like PCP or the guy. I asked the guy, and he was like, it's Colombian with hash oil. And I was like, okay, I need to leave. I actually literally had to walk out into the lobby because I couldn't take it. And then I'm sitting in the lobby. My friends come around me. They're like, are you all right? Are you all right? As the show is like, it was like the second song. And then they're like, dude. And then all of a sudden, I think they went into Sin City. And we, like, I think the early incarnation of Armored Saint played Sin City as a cover, one of the first songs that we ever kind of learned. And they're like, dude, Sin City. And I was like, oh, okay, let me try again. And I went back in, and then I was out of my mind, but then I mellowed out a little bit and enjoyed the show.
Well, I was sober during that show, and I'll tell you, that was my first show I saw. I was 15. And you're right by saying AC/DC was very underground. Before that, they started getting a little bit of airplay during Highway to Hell. And believe it or not, KROQ was playing some early. They were one of the first stations that I remember playing AC/DC prior to that. But they were very underground. You know, they were playing the Starwood and the Whiskey back in 77, you know, when. And then they did get that Aerosmith tour, but yeah, I mean, just unbelievable live band. But you know, going back to Powerage, everything about that album is perfect. The songs, the production, the lyrics, the guitar work is just, you know, every song is you know, like 3 to 5 minutes, but just hits you in the face. And like you say, you got that balance of the kind of groovy blues stuff of the, you know, Gone Shooting to, you know, Down Payment Blues to Up to My Neck and You to, you know, it's just a well-rounded record. Perfect album.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And what happened to you, John? Bob would have called breakfast.
Yeah, he would have, or to say he would have called me a pussy, probably.
I'm glad you went back in. Good for you.
Yes.
Yes. Good memories.
Yeah. So, John, going back to you now.
Okay, I'll pull one out. I found my list here. Okay, so Jailbreak and Lizzie.
I'm sure that was one of Don's, or I'm sure he had a Thin Lizzy on his list.
You know, great album. Probably my first exposure, or actually, you know, maybe my first exposure might have been Johnny the Fox, depending. I can't remember for sure, but if nothing else, it certainly went back to Jailbreak. But didn't see Thin Lizzy on Jailbreak, but saw them on Johnny the Fox.
Oh, wow.
They were opening for Queen at the Forum, Day at the Races tour. So that was like 1977. And that was amazing, of course. And, you know, Phil with his bass and the plexiglass that was kind of chrome, and he would shine the light on the crowd, which was pretty awesome. And but Jailbreak is just one of those records. You know, it has the heavy tunes like Emerald and Warrior, and you know, and the title track, and then it has stuff like Running Back and Romeo and The Lonely Girl, which the cool thing about a band like Thin Lizzy, and it might have actually been sometime to their disadvantage, I think, at least in America, was that they could do those kind of things. They could do stuff like heavy tracks like a Warrior and then do Running Back, and you'd be like, this is like a pop song, you know? And it might have created a little bit of a little disjointedness to a simpleton type of listener. But if you were somebody who, you know, would look a little deeper into music and hard rock or whatever, you would appreciate all of it. You know, that's what my personal opinion. And believe it or not, I think sometimes Armored Saint has that issue sometimes and has through the years. But not putting us on the same level as Thin Lizzy, because they were here and we're like here. But yeah, what a record. It was amazing.
Don, what are your thoughts on Jailbreak?
Listen, I obviously I can't disagree. I'm the guy that goes to Dublin every year to visit various Thin Lizzy things. So, I was listening actually yesterday to Jailbreak. I hadn't put it on in a while. And I just, I don't know. I still get amazed by it. I really do. For whatever reason, yesterday, Romy and the Lonely Girl was just really like, God damn, this song is like, I already know it's great, but why it seems even greater. And I've heard it a million times. And maybe Bob or even John, you might know this. Like, there's always a rumor that the single was supposed to be Running Back. And for whatever reason, it ended up being The Boys Are Back in Town. But that would kind of would make sense, right? Because Running Back's
totally
hit single, but I don't think it ever was.
That's funny. Yeah, that would have.
Yeah, I don't.
It would have been a whole different world if that would have happened. Obviously, Boys Are Back in Town is a legendary track, so they probably made the right decision with that.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to go on the road with the Black Star Riders for about 10 days in the UK. And open the shows up with them. And my favorite part of the night, besides being on tour with Scott fucking Gorham, how great is that? I mean, he called me John Jamieson for the first 3 days, but after we got to know one another a little better, the best part of the night was after the show, get back on the bus, get into the back lounge, and when the bottle of white wine was down to about half, that's when Scott would sort of lean and go, all right, I probably shouldn't tell you this one, but one time, and then it would just be like this one incredible Thin Lizzy story after another. I never asked, but as soon as he had a couple glasses of white wine after the show and he was relaxed, the Thin Lizzy stories would come out, and man, they're just
wow. Do you have one particular one that you could share, or?
I don't think he would like me to share any of these stories.
All right. We'll keep it into the back bus.
But needless to say, he any story that he told, obviously about Phil, the love for Phil's still there with Scott for all these years, and hey, listen, you listen to an album like Jailbreak, and you can feel it. That the chemistry with that band, there was a lot of friction, but there was a lot of love there too, man. And Jailbreak, perfect.
Yeah. I agree. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, Jailbreak is their most popular record," and Boys Are Back in Town. But really, like you say, I think the band really gelled together great. I think that friction really helped them. And Don and I and Brian Slager were on a great podcast. You could look it up here on the Shockwave Skull Sessions with Scott Gorham. We went through the entire Thin Lizzy catalog, and I believe Scott said, or maybe it's when I spoke with Brian Downey, I asked him about. And this was a great thing about bands in the 70s. I asked him, what John was saying, how the band could write such a diverse record with, go from a folky pop song to just a crushing song like Emerald to, an anthem like Boys Are Back in Town. And he said the same thing back then. The labels let you do what you want to do. You were in the studio and you could really do your artwork. And it was really before, when the 80s came around, maybe late 70s into the 80s, when FM radio started becoming big, everything became so formulated, and the record companies kept pushing for the radio hit. But you talk to a lot of these people, like Scott Gorham or Manny Charlton from Nazareth, because they were kind of the same. They were all over the place, and they said, no, we just kind of did what we felt. If we wanted to write, an acoustic kind of pop song, we would throw that on. And that's what I think made these albums so special. They were just so genuine. You could hear that there was no pressure from the label. And I think, Jailbreak's a perfect example as you talk about the diversity in the songs and that a band could do it and do it so well, every single, style of music. And it just really shows the talent of Phil and the entire band. I mean, Brian Downey, Scott Gorham, and Brian Robertson. I mean, the whole band was just on fire on that record. But yeah, again, a great balance of music. Thin Lizzy has so many great albums. It's hard to pick a favorite. But for me, I think Jailbreak, as far as just the live album is probably my favorite, because I think that's one of the ultimate live albums. But Jailbreak, absolutely, man, killer record.
Cool.
Brian Robertson was soon to be out, so that was really
true.
They caught the lightning in the bottle right there.
Yeah, I think when I saw them, it was Johnny the Fox, but it was still Brian on that album. I think at that point it was Gary Moore touring with them.
Wow! Okay.
From what I hear and what I remember, it was a long time ago, and this is, I think, what the.
Were you smoking anything then too?
I mean, it was 77. I was 14.
Well, it's funny because those two albums were released the same year, and it was that's what bands did back in the 70s. They were kind of forced, and so I would imagine a lot of those songs are probably the same session, the Johnny the Fox.
Maybe I think it was a different producer though, wasn't it?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, well, John Alcock, didn't he do both, or maybe
Scotty, wasn't that the guy?
Oh, did Scotty do that one? Did he do Johnny the Fox? No, Jailbreak was definitely John Alcock, and I think he did Johnny the Fox too, if I'm not mistaken. Don would probably know. We asked Scott about the sessions too. I think he did say they were separate sessions, but the label kind of after Boys Are Back in Town became a radio hit. That's what the labels do. Let's get you back in the studio and kind of rush that out. But yeah, interesting. All right, let me see here. Go on my list. I'm gonna go ahead and start off with this classic record here. Judas Priest, Hellbent for Leather, or in England it was called
Killing Machine.
Killing Machine, that's right. Killing Machine, that's right.
And why is that? Like, what's the official reason? Do we know?
I heard that they couldn't, which is odd to me, that they didn't want to use the word hell in England, but I would think it would kind of be the opposite. Like, you wouldn't want to use it here in the States, because usually the States was, but that was my thing, from what I understand, or they didn't think it would sell as well as Hellbent for Leather. But, to me, this album really defined heavy metal. I mean, you could say, yes, we had Black Sabbath and bands like that, but I think until this record came out, no band really embraced the term heavy metal and, having a title track like Hellbent for Leather. And this really brought on that whole heavy metal style and the look and the image with the leather and studs. And it was just such a groundbreaking record. I remember hearing, this is really when I first got really turned on to Priest. Well, I remember hearing Exciter off of Stained Class, and again, they were super underground in the States, and again, it was KROQ. I remember they did that show at the Starwood on this Hellbent for Leather tour, and the next day they had Rob Halford in the studio, and this is when bands would just come into the studio and just talk, for like an hour or 2 hours, and the DJ's just like playing tons of Judas Priest music and talking to Halford, and everyone's calling up, "Oh man, I saw that show at the Starwood. Yeah, you came out on your motorcycle on this," and that was the first time I ever heard an artist actually say, "We are a heavy metal band." Someone asked, how would you describe your music? He's like, "We are metal." And as you remember, before then, metal was kind of a bad term, or was used kind of as a diss, they're heavy metal, or so even Black Sabbath, Lemmy, no one wanted to be called heavy metal, but I'm hearing Rob Halford go, "We are heavy metal." I'm like, "Oh wow, that is cool, they're heavy metal." And this song just truly defines, I think, the production's a little bit clean. James Guthrie, I believe he did work with Pink Floyd on The Wall, and major producer. They had great songs. I mean, Burning Up, Hellbent for Leather, Green Manalishi. What a great cover of a Fleetwood Mac song. One of the best cover tunes. And they had done Diamonds and Rust earlier. I think, Priest just really knew how to metalize a great, kind of a pop song. And, everything on this album just rules. Evil Fantasies. You have Before the Dawn, you get a couple songs that kind of bring you down, but then it just brings you back up, and just and again, this album came out around the same time AC/DC with Power Ridge, and it was like Judas Priest and AC/DC. They were the new breed back then. I was into UFO, Sabbath, Zeppelin, Purple, and then you got Judas Priest, AC/DC, and I was turned on to Scorpions around that same time. But it was just like, wow, this is the heaviest. This is cool. But absolutely, Don, what's your thoughts on
Well, listen, I ripped off their cover and their title and, made it into Hellbent for Laughter for my second comedy album. that was near to my heart. I think, I think you're 100% right about, Halford and the whole band, really being one of the first ones to state that we are heavy metal and wear it proudly and still do to this day. Also, because the way Rob says it is so cool too. It's like, we're heavy metal.
Exactly.
Swing at the end.
Yeah.
I love listening to that guy talk. Yeah. How you doing? Home?
Yeah.
And such an ambassador and gentleman for our scene. And again, when you wear it on your sleeve like that, it's just such a great thing, especially for the fans. For me, you can hear this album is such the perfect album to bridge the gap between sort of them, like, they work a little proggy, like Sad Wings of Destiny, and then a little more metal-y for Stained Class, and now they're getting a little more towards the poppy stuff and really concentrating on songwriting, 3.5, 4-minute songs. And then what you get right after this, which naturally follows, is British Steel, which is Hellbent for Leather, but just condensed down to the pure steel, right? It doesn't have Before the Dawns and those different flavors, that Hellbent for Leather has, which makes me like Hellbent for Leather a lot more. And the last thing is, the story I always heard was the opposite of what you said, Bob, which was it was Killing Machine, obviously over in Europe and Asia or wherever in that part of the world. But for America, they were told Killing Machine won't sell.
Oh, that could be. That could be. Yeah.
So.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I
know Armored Saint did a great cover of Hellbent for Leather.
Well, we played Hellbent for Leather a lot. We never actually recorded it, but we played it a lot live in the early days. And then we always used Delivering the Goods as like our intro tape in the last couple of tours that we did, which is cool because it certainly pumps us up to go on stage. So, I mean, needless to say, I'm very close to that record. I really think the cool thing about that record, too, is that it's pretty bluesy, And I think that especially the way Rob sang and, like songs like Killing Machine and, Running Wild and Delivering the Goods, Rock Forever, these are songs that I wish they would write again, with that little bit of a bluesy element. I think that as time went on, they kind of got away from that a little bit and felt a little bit more like they had to write these metal tracks. And look, I'm not saying anything negative at all. I mean, I love Screaming for Vengeance and everything, so many other things that followed this album, but there was that element of bluesiness that on this particular record that I think is kind of limited to that for Priest almost at times. Because like you said, Don and I agree, that Sin After Sin, Stained Class, were almost like a little proggy at times. Sad Wings. I mean, you had songs like Epitaph and Dreamer Deceiver, which is amazing. So they were very, the songwriting and arrangements were a little bit more loose as far as the way they wrote those. But Hellbent, is a little more concise and had that, the way he sang was just like, and it's funny because I think of Rob Halford as very, especially in those days, very inspired by Robert Plant. And it's funny because I went on Wikipedia and looked recently about Halford and said some of his favorite singers was Robert Plant, back in the day, of course. And you hear that, like I could hear Robert Plant singing some of those songs off Hellbent for Leather, which would be really cool to hear that. Of course, that's just some fantasy of mine. But, I think that's something that I really always, I love Stained Class. I mean, I love Sin. I love Sad Wings of Destiny. Those records are super close to me, Unleashed in the East, of course. But Hellbent is the one record that I feel like kind of enters into that bluesier phase. And I miss that. I miss that from them.
Incidentally, I believe Rob Halford was one of Robert Plant's favorite singers at the time. You might have heard the story when Zeppelin did the Day on the Green, their very last shows in what, 79 or something. I was probably on this tour. They invited Judas Priest to open up,
right.
You know, and that was because apparently Robert Plant was a big fan of Rob Halford's vocals. So it kind of goes both ways. But I do see what you're saying. I love Priest, how they did really kind of, you know, start off, like you say, a very proggy band. Then they went into this avenue, and I never really thought of it, but there is a lot of blues. This is probably the only Priest song where there's that kind of bluesiness to it. On some of the songs.
It has like a bit of a boogie and a swing to it, even.
Yeah.
You know, even though it's heavy. So it's I never heard it put that way, John. That's such a great take on that album.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And yeah, and Halford's vocals on Delivering the Goods and some of those songs is just so powerful. That was just like, oh my God, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That pretty much, you know, cemented his place right there. You know, I mean, among so many other albums and songs and his voice, but like that really, you know, he really is the king. He really is the king. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely, Don. Why don't you go for your next album?
Oh, look at that.
To discuss. Motorhead. Is that their debut? Oh, the live album.
I just was looking at that cover yesterday too. That's so fun.
No Sleep Till Hammersmith.
Man, I mean, what can you say? It's Motorhead's only #1 album.
Wow.
You know, the cover alone has you in awe. You know, you got the bomber up there, and man, you know, obviously from top to bottom, phenomenal. One of the great classic live albums in the hard rock heavy metal genre. But my favorite part of the album, and I used to do this with my friends all the time, and I still don't know what the answer to it is, and we'll never be able to ask Lemmy, unfortunately. But like right before the last song, Motorhead, before they play Motorhead, Lemmy steps up to the mic and he goes, "Just in case."
Yeah.
Friends would always wonder, like, just in case what?
If you forget our name, that's what I always say. In case you don't remember who we are, you know.
Just in case you get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Just in case you haven't lost your hearing completely.
True.
Right. Funny.
It means so many things, but yeah, obviously, you know, Thin Lizzy, Motorhead are my 1A, 1B favorite bands, and you know, again, with a catalog like theirs, could have picked a lot of albums, but you know, this was their #1, and if we're gonna go with a live album, that's a pretty darn good one to go with.
It could have been a double live album, really. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't the only songs from that show, because how many songs are on the album? Like 11?
Well, there is a version that has the other songs on it.
How many more songs are on it? Do you know?
So there's 11 on this.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 4. There's a version that has like 4 other songs on it.
Oh, wow. So, do you know what those songs are by chance?
You know what? If I'm gonna have to leave my box and go get. I think I have the.
Don't leave your box. Don't leave. Hollywood Squares here.
I do have the bonus too. I think they on the reissues they do have some live bonus.
Well, must have been maybe other Ace of Spades songs, because that was the album.
I think We Are the Road Crew, was that one of them?
No, that's on that. That's on that.
Oh, that is on it. Okay, yeah, you're right.
Maybe Fast and Loose.
I don't remember either, because but we'll have to go back and check.
I'm looking it up because you won't let me look it up.
I like this one's dedicated to Little Filthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, on that one too, it took years for me and my friends to decipher what Lemmy was saying there. And as we all know, having been veterans of Motorhead shows for decades, you only picked up maybe about 25% of what Lemmy ever said, you know, because he just had that real thick British, you know, twang. But yeah, he says on that one, he says, this one's for, what does he say? He goes, this one's for me and Eddie, because this one's dedicated to Little Philbert, right? That's that one. Then there's another one where he goes, this one's dedicated to me and Eddie because Phil's already had one. But I could never understand what he said, but that's what he says in front of that one.
Cool.
Wow.
And they do that, and yeah.
Well, we saw Motorhead. I saw Motorhead open for Ozzy.
I was at that show, Long Beach Arena.
Yeah. Right. And then they played the Country Club like a day or two after that. And we went to that. Excruciatingly loud to the point where it was inaudible at times. As a matter of fact, I remember me and Phil Sandoval sitting there at the tables and like had our hands in our ears, fingers in our ears, because, well, for one, you could actually hear it then because it was so loud that it was like I said, it was just inaudible at times. Like I can't imagine how they actually were able to play together. It was so loud. And I remember them opening for Ozzy, and Motorhead wasn't that known in America at that point. So not on that. And I think the crowd was like taken aback by them for the most part.
They were, definitely. They did. And again, the sound there was like this bombastic. It was just like, the Long Beach Arena is a big place. It was just like this ambient sound, and you couldn't decipher what they were doing. And I remember people after the show, what the hell were they? Were they punk rock? What the hell was that? It's like, no, it's fucking Motorhead, man. And
right. And then I remember like Lemmy said something like, are they alive or something? And then Fast Eddie said, I think they're deaf. It was pretty funny. Well, I knew them, but a lot of people, I would say at least half, maybe more, probably didn't even know who Motorhead was.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I remember I used to wear the Motorhead, the jacket with all the patches, and Motorhead, what, did you work on cars? What's the Motorhead? Even this was after Ace of Spades, it took a while before they, in England, of course, they were huge. Like you said, this was a #1 record in England, which is pretty astonishing. They were huge. They ruled England. They were the metal band in England, and this was them at their prime. And I think that the song Motorhead is one of the greatest live performances. That just song is so heavy live, and I love Ace of Spades that came out domestically. I remember buying that for the first time. That was like the heaviest album ever, to hear as a kid. It's like, holy shit, and every song brutal start to finish. And but yeah, as far as
what's cool on this record too is songs like Capricorn and Metropolis, because they're almost like bluesy. Bluesy has those, it's a little bit almost, I don't want to say ballady, of course, because that certainly would be misinterpreted, but those songs were not just crushers. They were a little bit more, had a vibe, bluesy, a little more ambient. I love those two songs in particular. They're great songs.
Well, Lemmy says before Capricorn, he says, hit this one's a slow one so you can get melted out, man.
Right.
Yeah, he had the greatest phrases, him. And, you could tell they had such a great rapport between the three of them. I love watching that classic albums thing that they do on Ace of Spades and hearing Filthy and them joke together. And, of course, all three of them have passed since. But you just see, they broke up, for years. Yet they get together and they're still like best friends, talking about this record, between Filthy, Eddie, and Lemmy. And it was just so warm. Yeah, that's a great one.
Cool.
So, I was going to use Ace of Spades, but it's framed and bolted to the wall of my bathroom. So I went for
Right on. Well, great choice. John.
Okay, my next one I saw on my list was Love Drive from the Scorpions.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and we're in that kind of time frame right there. So Love Drive was the record that I think kind of introduced the Scorpions to at least the United States. Obviously they were known in Europe and Japan. And I believe it followed. Did it follow Tokyo Tapes?
Yeah, it followed Tokyo Tapes.
Right, so. That was the record. I think maybe were they with Mercury before that, or because that album,
I think they were still the RCA up until I think Love Drive was their first. So
I think they were with Mercury there. I don't know. Cliff Bernstein. I think Bernstein and Mensch either signed them or were managing them at that time. But again, this was
with Krebs.
Lieber and Krebs, right? Because they were part of that management.
Yeah, they teamed together. Yeah,
Peter were
for like UFO, Scorpions, and then Rush a little bit after.
Right, Rush, yeah. But what a great record. It was Matthias Jabs kind of coming in, but he wasn't playing on all the leads because Michael played on some of those songs as well. You know, really great tunes. Again, you know, we're able to play heavy songs like Can't Get Enough and Love Drive, Another Piece of Meat, you know, but also had Holiday, you know, and Loving You Sunday Morning. And these songs that were a little bit more almost poppy, you know, if you will. And Klaus was just, you know, killing it on the voice, and the production was amazing. And, you know, I think that Animal Magnetism followed that, if I'm not mistaken, and it has had probably a little more success because it had like the Zoo and more radio play. But Love Drive is always the record I think that is the most special as far as, you know, following the Yuli years for me as far as the Scorpions go.
Yeah, agreed. And that's the one that broke them in America. And you know, they didn't. Nobody, you know, I'm probably one of the few people in Jersey where I grew up that even knew there was the Uli John Roth era of the Scorpions. And here's this new version of the band, basically. You know, that the only person anybody here really knew was Michael Schenker, who had obviously made a name, you know, with UFO here prior to that. So, but nobody really knew about the Uli years, you know, and you know, Tokyo Tapes, like any of us could have picked that album as well as a classic. But you're right, John, for the importance of the Scorpions breaking in America, Love Drive was the album.
Yeah, agreed. But you're right, because they were very underground here. Because this was the album I got turned on to the Scorpions by. I had heard about them before. You know, it's funny because nowadays, you know, no label. I mean, even when there were record labels still around, you know, throughout the 80s and 90s, no one would let a band do 5 or 6 records as they did with Uli Roth before breaking, you know, because it took them that long. AC/DC, same, even Judas Priest, the same. It took them, you know, several records before they actually broke into America, but the labels kept with them and the band evolved, and they, you know, and that was a great thing with Scorpions. I mean, obviously the Uli Roth era was amazing, but it was a different band. It really had a Hendrixy influence, more of a very 70s vibe, and I think this album, I believe, came out in '79, but it really introduced, it was one of the heaviest albums. I mean, you talk about I Can't Get Enough. That was one of the most slamming kind of introduction to like the speed metal, the riffs, you know, I mean, just such a heavy tune. And Love Drive, just a anthemic song. And I believe they toured with Ted Nugent here. And that
I was just going to ask that about touring.
Yeah, they did Ted Nugent.
Certainly didn't see him in LA, I don't think.
I missed it. They did, I think, Long Beach Arena or the LA Sports Arena with Ted Nugent, because I talked to some people, but it wasn't well advertised that Scorpions were on the bill. But and I remember talking to Herman Rarebell about that. He said that, you know, that's what broke them in America, because they had never been to America before, and it was just, you know, and it was Krebs and Bernstein and them that brought them over.
What Ted Nugent record was that?
It was probably Weekend Warriors, I would think.
Weekend Warriors, really?
Did that come out in '80? No, I think it was probably because '78 was still Cat Scratch Fever. It might have been the Double Live Gonzo. Weekend Warriors might have, because they probably toured in '80. That album came out in '79, so I think that score was in '80. What's that?
'78. Weekend Warriors was '78.
Oh, was it that early? Okay, so it was definitely the Weekend Warriors tour, because it was.
State of Shock was '79.
Okay, well there you go. Wow, I'm way off.
Okay,
but yeah, I mean that's probably my favorite Scorpions record too, just because it's got, like you said, it's got everything. It's got a great ballad, Holiday, one of the first, you know, kind of you know, real straight on rock ballads. Great album, great guitar work, and it's got, like you said, Matthias, I think, plays on some of it after Schenker left, and Schenker plays on a good part, you know, Coast to Coast. What a great instrumental.
Oh yeah.
Loving You Sunday Morning, such a classy tune, you know, and yeah, great album. Don, would you remember anything? Oh, I guess you talked a bit about this album. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
The only last thing I'll add is about Matthias is like he really was the secret weapon to making them sort of, you know, the sound that we came to know from the Scorpions in terms of his guitar work. As he once told me, we had dinner with the Scorpions Jim and Eddie and I, and he said we were talking about Uli's name came up. And Matthias said, he goes, the difference between us is one of us worships Jimi Hendrix and the other thinks he's Jimi Hendrix.
Wow, that's great. That's a great line. Well, you're right about Matthias. I think he's such an underrated guitar player, and obviously to follow the footsteps of both Uli and Michael Schenker is got to be tough. But I think he's just got such a classy edge. He's just so much taste in his guitar work. And he did bring that more commercial appeal. I think you're right to the Scorpions, especially with the albums that follow, Blackout in particular. Yeah, cool, definitely. Well, I guess I'm up here. What do I have here for this? Well, I don't even have the CD with me. UFO Obsession. Again, if I was going to go with the UFO, it'd probably be the live album, of course, Stranger Than the Night, one of the greatest live albums ever released, I think. But Obsession. It's either between that or Lights Out as well. They're very, very kind of similar. Ron Nevison produced both. Unbelievable production. But I think the production on Obsession, Michael Schenker's guitar tone has got that thick, wet kind of ambient. I mean, it's just, it just breaks through the speakers on his leads. And it's just every song on that record. Again, such a class act. I mean, I think it was the band really at its prime. Again, I always flip-flop between that and the Lights Out record. I mean, Love to Love, I think, along with Judas Priest, Beyond the Realms of Death, the greatest rock ballad ever written. And on this album, you've got Looking Out for Number One, very similar with the strings and all that. Not as good as Love to Love, but then again, you got Pack It Up and Go, one of my favorite songs, Hot and Ready. Of course, Cherry, what a great tune, classy tune. And again, as a, was that?
It's such a weird tune in a way, and it's in the set list.
Yeah, absolutely. And Phil Mogg's lyrics, so overrated. Such a great lyricist, and always has a great kind of sense of humor about his lyrics. And all in all, I think that album is just perfect. Just such a killer record, start to finish. Comments, John Bush.
Oh, let Don go.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Don.
You know what? I don't have that much more to add to it, man. I agree. To me, excuse me. If someone said, "What UFO album should I listen to really get a hard on for Schenker's playing?" I would tell them Obsession. I think that I agree with you 100% on that. To me, that's his playing in a nutshell. I love the variety of the songs. Like I said, I don't know why Cherry's it's such a weird song. It's such it stands out from all the other songs, and like I said, they still play that song live to this date. And there wasn't any real big hit off of there.
Only You Could Rock Me kind of was a radio hit, and that kind of played off the Too Hot to Handle. Yeah, in America.
I think a lot of people would say Lights Out because even in America that song got radio play, but nothing on this really did. Maybe that's why this album I would put this one on always before Lights Out. I just think this is the better overall record. And you're right, Ron Nevison's production is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was cool about it, it sounded like, and I don't know if they did this, I don't have any background for this, but it almost like they told Schenker doodle throughout the record. Just always play some, notes that kind of embellish like a vocal line. And so he did that. It was weird because on every song, there's just a lot of doodling. And always very tastefully done in between vocal lines and little segments. There's just a lot of little things that really make it super unique to his style. And that was the thing that I always hear when I hear that record. Michael Schenker's, he's, arguably the most underrated rock, hard rock guitar player of all time, at least in my opinion. The songs are really cool. There's definitely some, deep tracks, Ain't No Baby. And like you said, One More for the Rodeo, different,
great beat. Yeah.
Just like deep tracks and stuff that, like we've talked about in association with a lot of these records from that time that were just not an obvious hard rock song, you know. But again, that's the beauty of it all. And but you know, you have the Hot and Readies and you know, songs like, you know, Pack It Up and Go that are just those really powerful tracks. And I think they opened another show among the many that I didn't go to. But remember, Judas Priest at the start with one that I'll kick myself for the rest of my life for. But I think they opened for Blue Oyster Cult on that album, and they played the Forum. And I wanted to see UFO more than Blue Oyster Cult because I was more into UFO. But I just don't think my mom let me go. I
wonder if Schenker played that because he was kicked out not long after or after the live record.
Yeah,
he was in and out.
I think he did play on that album because then I saw the No Place to Run tour, and which is one that Maiden opened.
No, they Maiden opened the other tour. It was the Wild and Willing tour. Maiden opened.
Oh, okay, so. But I did say No Place to Run.
Yeah, that was great. Sue Sad and the Next. I don't know how I remember that, but it was some band. That opened up. Because I remember that was one of my first shows too, and that was an amazing show.
And, it was great.
Again, they did 2 nights at Long Beach Arena, and people like to say, you know, how underground UFO was. I'm going 2 nights at fucking Long Beach Arena. That's pretty huge, you know.
That is.
And that was with the Paul Chapman era.
Yeah, it was right. So, and I mean, that's a cool record as well. But of course, you know, as we've said, like some of these people have to follow legends. It's not easy. And Paul Chapman had, you know, that kind of difficult task. But yeah, I never saw him with Schenker until they did the reunion run.
That was Brun at the Palace. Yeah. I was there with you on one of those nights. Yeah, we were pretty hammered. But I agree with you about Schenker's playing on that. I mean, people always go, oh, like Eddie Van Halen or Yngwie Malmsteen. They just play to play over the shit, you know, or at least Yngwie Malmsteen does in a way. But Schenker's playing is so tasteful. It's just like, wow, that is just the perfect little. It's not just, you know, mindless noodling. It's like it just fits. It's just so tasty his playing, and that's what makes it such a great guitarist. He's got this feel. It's not just all about technique or hammering or doing this. It's just it follows the lyrics, like you say, so well.
It could just be one note. You know?
You
know, it's something as simple as that. For sure.
Absolutely. So I guess Don.
Yes.
What's next on your list?
Australia to England. And then
yes. Yes.
And look at that guy on the cover. I mean,
the Mighty Tyor.
We're gonna go with this.
I don't know. Well, the last album, well, actually, all their albums, you know, Narita had it with an axe. You know, this big fat seal with an axe.
This is going to be our next cover.
There you go. The mascot. I think that's great, though, because you look at that, you go, there's nothing metal about this. But then you put it on, and here's Swords and Tequila right at the Fire Down Under. You're like, holy shit. Yeah. But go ahead, Don. Lead off on Fire Down Under.
Yeah, that's, I mean, and I was lucky enough to get it signed by great Mark Reale.
That's awesome.
Who we had on that metal show. And he passed a short time later, so I'm very honored that he put his signature on this record because all these years later, it's still one of my favorites. I put it on often. This is an original vinyl. You could, I mean, you won't be able to see really on here, but you could see where the album has, you know, you could see the outline of the actual record through the cover now because it's so worn. But the album still sounds great on vinyl. It's another one. There's really, you know, there's no weak real moment in this at all. Even the flashback song at the end, was, you know, made as a tribute to the DJ over in England, you know, that kind of broke them over there.
Neil Kay? Would that be Neil Kay? Yeah.
Yep. So that was done as a tribute to him. But from Swords and Tequila, and again, this is I think there's a common theme with all these albums, which is these classic albums anyway, and why we still listen to them is because there's so many different textures and flavors and layers to the stuff. So you get the 1-2 punch in the face from Swords and Tequila, Fire Down Under, and then you get Feel the Same, which kind of takes you down a little bit, you know, and that's in this album you kind of bounce up and down on, but it's heavy through and through. Lots of great melody, lots of just great classic Les Paul playing by Mark Reale, nice clean Les Paul tone on there, and you know, didn't last all that long. But, you know, with Guy Speranza anyway, he decided to go back and be an exterminator for some reason. You could make this album and then decide I'm going to go spray love instead. But that's more of a commentary on the music business, I guess, than anything else.
Yeah, what a great singer he was, you know, and it's, you know, that record for in the people who are in the know, they know that record is like one of the best metal records and hard rock records in American rock, I think.
Absolutely.
But you know, it's still underrated, really, for that matter. It's still underrated. I mean, Riot certainly, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was way bigger in Europe than they were in America ever.
Castle Donington.
Castle Donington. And on the first album, wasn't it? They played on the first album.
Or was it on Narita? I think it was on Narita.
Oh, I'm sorry, Narita.
Road Race. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, and why did he quit the band? Because
he could make more money being an exterminator.
Yeah.
And then, do we think that killed him?
I probably they think it because he had cancer, like lung cancer.
Yeah.
Back then, when you were an exterminator, you didn't have all the
Gear,
healthy,
Right.
I think it was a show they did after they did. I remember reading it was a great article, a recent article I read about them, and they got all the surviving members in Sandy Slavin talking about that. They said just after one show, I think in Texas, Guy just said he had enough. You know, he had enough with the music business, and that band was under a lot of pressure by everything. And they said just after the show, he says, "Hey, this is my last show with the band," and that was it. You know, and then he just went off and never, you know, it was done.
Did they ever play LA on that album? Do you know, Bob?
I don't know. I don't know about if they ever did LA. I know they canceled. But I think that was still with Rhett Forrester. I remember seeing them at the Concert Factory with Rhett Forrester. You guys played with them when we went to Arizona at the Nightline. Oh, no, they played the previous day. We went and saw Riot at the Nightline in Phoenix when we all went to Arizona. When we were
that was with Rhett Forrester.
Rhett Forrester, yeah, that was Restless Breed. But no, back to that, I don't know if they ever did. I know supposedly they toured like with Sabbath. They toured with a bunch of bands. Like in San Antonio, Texas, they were huge. Certain because they had DJs. Certain places. I heard that album actually did go gold eventually.
Wow.
Fire Down Under. So, but I agree. Great. I think that album literally right up there with the first Van Halen record or the first Montrose album as best American metal records, and that is the perfect record. I think that album was actually recorded in like '79, but they went through all these politics. Capitol said this is way too heavy. They dropped them. Then they got picked up by Elektra, and they waited. So I think the actual release date was '81. But imagine if that came out in '79, how heavy that would have been at that time. But
Don, did you ever see him with Guy Speranza?
No, never got a chance to. And, it's so funny, and yeah, they did do. There's on YouTube. You can find there's a Riot documentary, and the common theme was kind of like, you know, Guy Speranza was never really that into it, and it's like, wait, the guy that sang this album was not that into it. Okay, I'll take this not that into it than you know most people who are way into it. But apparently, it just wasn't a big thing for him, which is amazing when you have this gorgeous, you know, like Brad Delp kind of, you know, from Boston kind of voice up, you know, that in the high range and could do all kinds of stuff with it that it just wasn't that important to him. But look what we got, you know, we got an absolute classic out of him.
That's
well, I
great.
think he had said that you know, he had a family to support, you know, wife, and I think he had kids, and he wasn't getting paid in Riot. He wasn't. They were ripping him off. You know, the record companies or the management or whatever it was. He said he just couldn't really. You know, he was barely making ends meet, and he had a lot of pressure from the wife and everything. Hey, you know, get a real job. So become an exterminator. It's a sad story. Yeah, that whole Riot story is a very sad story. You know.
Yeah.
They should have been huge.
He left a great legacy with the music for sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome choice.
Yes. John Book.
I think this is one of my last records here, and I do got to pee so bad.
Oh.
Anyways, I think it was, I told Bob, I think let's do Maiden Killers. Even though that we're getting out of the 70s a little bit. Hey. But Killers is, such a great record. And it's the record that, obviously the second one with Di'Anno and the record that, that was his last record, of course. And Bruce is incredible, of course, and did so many awesome things as well. And I love, Number of the Beast, but Killers is the one that is just, again, a little more in the know for certainly people in the US. I mean, at that point, Iron Maiden was blowing up, and we're starting to in America for sure as well. But, there's just so many great songs to the Killers record. It's just kind of undeniable, and Di'Anno sounds great on that album. He really does. So
I always think Kiss was my gateway. Kiss Destroyer was my gateway album just into hard rock in general, but specifically Killers was my gateway drug into heavy metal, very specifically. I picked up that album, looked at the cover, and I said, I don't know what this sounds like, but I'm buying it and taking it home.
I know you're gonna like it.
And I just knew I was getting the 3 chords into Ides of March. I'm already sold on it. And to me, if you still ask me to this day, what's your favorite Maiden album? It's still Killers for me. It's still that album that just like, oh man, no disrespect for everything afterwards, but that's still the album that just does it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's awesome.
John, why don't you go take a pee?
I'll be right back.
So I know how that is when you're in the middle of a podcast and I go, oh, man, I gotta piss. But no, I agree with you about Killers. I remember when that came out, and that album cover is like, and it mixes everything. You got still the progginess, Steve Harris's love for progginess, and you got the new wave of British heavy metal, this new metal sound. And then even though Steve Harris will deny it to this day, you have that punk edge of Paul Di'Anno. He's got that punk attitude and that delivery in his voice, and he had that real rough London accent. He wasn't a great singer technically like a Bruce Dickinson was, but he just had that attitude and that edge, and it fits so perfectly. Yeah, Bruce is the siren. And, Paul was, the guy that would walk off stage and kick your ass in the alley. He was a punk. He wasn't a finesse fighter. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And that was John. Go ahead on Killers. That was quick. What was that? I said that was a quick one. Well, I'm drinking this, we're starting this little juice cleanse because for me, I need some help. And so my wife is got it together for me, and this is a broth. It's like a beef broth. Oh, right. But bone broth. But I just need to do that. So I'm going to be peeing a lot, even more than I normally do, to go with my coffee. But nobody needs to know any of this. Sorry. But Killers, saw them open for UFO. Yeah. Right. I said that earlier. So and that was awesome. That was all Long Beach Arena. And I think they opened for Maiden. Did they open for Maiden, or was that the next record? I mean, Priest. Excuse me. No, they opened for Priest. No, it was that tour. They here in the States they opened for. I mean, here in California they opened up for UFO, but I think elsewhere, like in Texas and other places, they opened up for Priest. So I think it was the same tour. In Jersey, they did for sure. It was my first heavy metal concert. Was Iron Maiden on the Killers tour, Priest on the Point of Entry tour. Yep. At Asbury Park Convention Center, and there was three Jersey boys, young men with mullets, who would all later team up together to do that metal show, but didn't know each other at the time. All at the same show, and all got the same impression from it, which was life-changing. To see that show, and then shortly after to see. Obviously Maiden then them become the headliner, and then go out on their own tour once Bruce got in their own headlining tour once Bruce got in the band, and Number of the Beast blew up. So, but yeah, that concert was
I can still remember it like it was yesterday, because I was 15, I think, and I wasn't drinking or doing anything to excess at that point. So that concert I'll always remember.
Yeah,
that was great.
That was a great show. But yeah, what more can you say about that? But that tour was, they opened up for UFO, and sad to say they blew UFO away, and I wasn't really expecting that. But there was this hunger. You knew that there was something new coming across, from Europe, and that really. I mean, we all had the underground tapes, and you had Motorhead came with Ozzy, I think, a few months before then. Then Maiden came, then Saxon came to the Whiskey, and of course Metallica opened up those two shows. And, then Girls' School came over. They started, but when Maiden came over and opened up for UFO playing the arena and just stole the show, you're like, wow, this is the new sound. This is something really
cool. Songs on that album too, like Innocent Exile and Genghis Khan, weird, arrangements, instrumental, and Purgatory was always a really cool song. And again, a lot of cool deep tracks on that album. Wrathchild and Killers, and Murders in the Rue Morgue is a really great song. And
Drifter in the set list for a long, long time, even with Bruce for many, many years.
Yeah. And I remember that concert. They used to show it on MTV, believe it or not, where they did like Wrathchild and I think one of the other songs at the Rainbow, Live at the Rainbow with Diano, and still one of the greatest, back then especially. You never saw anything that heavy on MTV, and that full concert, I think it's like a half hour, Live at the Rainbow in England, and just unbelievable.
And definitely miss Clyde Burr. Nothing against Nico, he's amazing, of course, and obviously has been a mainstay for Maiden for all these years. But Clyde Burr did have a unique style that was just really different as a drummer, and I don't know what it was, but he just had this particular style that was I can't even determine how his playing was. It was maybe even a little jazzy, I don't know, but very fast in the way, it played the hi-hat and a lot of rolls, but things were not fast as in fast like a blast beat in any case, but just really quick hands, and that certain style. Once he wasn't part of the band any longer, I think they missed that. They missed that a bit because of his. It just was really unique to the way he played. So
agreed. And it's amazing how a drummer could change the sound of a band and change the direction a little bit. You go back to Judas Priest when they had Les Binks to Dave Holland. Came to more of a straight 4/4 heavy. And then even before then with Simon Phillips, who was more of a jazz drummer on the Sin After Sin record. A drummer can change the dynamics of the sound of the band, definitely, sure. and definitely in Maiden's case, I think so, for sure. Do you guys have a time to go? I don't know why I was thinking 10 albums each. I mean, we could barely get through the 5. You guys got a few more minutes. We could go through the remainder here. We'll kind of.
Yeah, you want to go down
like another 10 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. I got I got to have a Zeppelin album in there. Physical Graffiti. I just thought was the pinnacle of Zeppelin, a double album. And what I think makes this album, everyone could argue, Zeppelin 4, this and that, but you come to Physical Graffiti, you have a double album, and every song on that album is completely different. It's completely off. It could have been like, 20 different bands playing, on this record. I mean, it was just so completely diverse. But it all just flowed together for that double album, the sequencing, everything. It was like, you got from Kashmir to In My Time of Dying, one of the greatest songs, to the Wonton song, such a heavy, to, a Boogie with Stu, Black Country Woman. You got, just such a diversity. Night Flight, just this kind of happy poppy song. The Houses of the Holy
is a great song. 10 Years Gone is amazing.
10 Years Gone is amazing. Sick Again. I mean, you could just go on. The Rover. I mean, and it's got so many songs that for a Zeppelin album that are just kind of undiscovered classics in a way. But you listen to those songs and then you realize you know, because you go, oh man, I'm sick of Zeppelin. Oh, they've been overplayed. Then you listen to that record, you go, God damn, this. You really see how great this band was, you know, and I don't know, for a double album to be that diverse, and it's, you know, very few bands could do something like that, like a Zeppelin, you know.
No doubt.
What are your thoughts, Don?
Oh yeah, it's on my turntable right now, so it's in my immediate plans to listen. Yeah, how do all these songs fit together? They just do. I don't know what the explanation is. It just is pleasing to the ear, and the disparity doesn't bother me at all. It still seems to flow for whatever reason. You're right. It's a double album. To me, it's their greatest musical achievement. When I lived in the East Village in New York for many years, I lived 3 blocks from the apartments that are featured on the front.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I took a picture there a couple of years ago with a couple of the guys from Saxon, because they had never been down there. And, you know, when we were kids, we thought that must be, you know, some mansion in England somewhere. And it turns out it's just a bunch of apartments on East 8th Street in St. Mark in New York. So that was really cool. I live right near the Physical Graffiti apartments, you know.
That's right.
So I love that one. And last note, Trampled Underfoot.
Ah, yes.
Listen to Trampled Underfoot, and then listen to the Doobie Brothers' Long Train Running. Same song.
Oh, really?
So,
wow.
Same song.
Wow.
Wow, that's interesting. I never noticed.
I'll do that.
I'll do that after the podcast. Yeah. Cool. John Bush, your thoughts on
did Zeppelin ever? Did they tour on that album?
Yeah, I was so young then. This was 76, I think, and I don't know. Oh, yeah. I know a lot of those songs were supposedly from the Houses of the Holy session. Hence, the song "Houses of the Holy" appears on Physical Graffiti. Right. Supposedly, that was done. And there's what interesting thing about that. There's a lot of different producers on that record, so they were done in different sessions. I think there's Eddie Kramer, Andy Johns, and even Ron Nevison, I think, was engineering a lot of the stuff on that record. But I don't know. I believe they toured.
Well, because I saw them on the Presence tour, which was the following year.
Oh, wow. You saw
it. That was the big tour they did. But I don't remember them touring on Physical Graffiti, but maybe I was just too young, actually, to believe
I don't know. They toured House of the Holy, which, of course, was the song Remains the Same, was off the House of the Holy. So it's interesting. Maybe they didn't tour the States. I don't know. I don't recall.
Yeah, it's a classic record, of course. What I've been doing lately is because I don't want to burn out on my own music, because I don't know when I'll be performing in. So I've just been going through like my whole catalog from starting at A, and I'm up to like L now. I think I told you that, but like I did Zeppelin. I mean, I did a lot of these records. I've sang to them for sure. I was just singing to Motorhead yesterday, but I did some Zeppelin, and I did Physical Graffiti among the other records, and I probably forgot how good that record was. And again, the diversity, like you said, and it's a long album, and it just never loses you. You know?
Yeah, it's amazing. And In My Time of Dying, such a heavy. I mean, the drums. You know, people talk about, of course, when the levee breaks and all that. Prior to that, one of the best John Bonham drum sounds, but I think In My Time of Dying, that is like the ultimate drum. It's just so fucking big, and that whole song is heavy.
Chris Cornell, didn't Soundgarden play that on their last show? Wasn't that the
In My Time of Dying?
I don't know. I know they played that. I don't know if they played that often on that last tour. They did, but that there's definitely, that was in the set before he took his life, or how.
So this was him doing solo, not Soundgarden.
Wasn't it Soundgarden,
or was it Soundgarden?
I think it was Soundgarden.
Oh, when they reformed.
Wasn't it? But weren't Soundgarden on tour when he?
Yes.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
And I think it was in the set, and I don't think it was. I mean, obviously they didn't learn it that day because they must have known the song, but it was kind of weird that they played that song that night.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. I didn't hear.
Which would have been amazing to hear Chris Cornell singing that song, of course. covers.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. He wouldn't have tackled, I don't think, something that heavy and obscure in his solo stuff. So
that's true.
Totally hear Soundgarden crushing that song.
I think you can find it on YouTube, actually.
Oh, wow. I know they did a cover of Into the Void, and I hate that because they completely redo the lyrics. And the lyrics just, because the lyrics on that song are brilliant. Geezer Butler's lyrics, and Chris Cornell redoes it, and it just doesn't sound right. The lyrics don't flow. They don't rhyme. It's like, what are you doing? Why'd you change the lyrics to such a great song? You know,
that is weird.
I never got that.
That is weird.
Yeah. All right. Well, Don, I guess next album.
All right, last one from me, or what do we?
Is it the last or the second to last for you?
I don't know. All right, so let me do. All right, I'll do this one.
I love how you have them. Oh, dude.
Oh, who's that? Never heard of him.
Oh, but he has. All right, cool.
A hidden gem. Armored Saint Badlands. Interesting.
Awesome.
There you go. You got a singer in there. Obviously in Kiss. You got Jakey Lee. Obviously the
Greg Chason.
Infamous Ray Gillen right there.
Singer.
Well, we all kind of know the story with Ray. But if you're just looking at this album or listening to this album, it just has an incredible musical experience. This is, Jakey Lee coming out of Ozzy and putting this together. This is almost impossible to find on vinyl because they stopped printing the Badlands albums.
Yeah.
And
what label was that on again?
Atlantic. But it was weird because it was on Titanium Atlantic, which was Andy Setcher from Hit Parader's label. And I heard they kind of ran out of money or something, because you're thinking that album should have been huge, because that was a great album, especially for the time. Jakey right out of Sabbath, out of Ozzy, and Ray Gillen did that little stint with Sabbath too. Eternal Idol, the Eternal Gillen, you could actually find that online. But yeah, I think a tremendous album. But I think Titanium, because they were getting a lot of MTV, a lot of radio for a while, and then it just kind of dropped. I think the label, something with the label, it didn't, they ran out of money, or budget's done, kind of thing.
Wow.
It's a shame. Yeah.
But just top to bottom, obviously, again, Dreams in the Dark was the big video that you saw on MTV. And I don't know what else to say about it. It's just it's another one that, like what John said about Fire Down Under. For people in the know, they know.
Yeah.
This is it was never a huge album, but for true hard rockers in the know, this is in everyone's collection.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember seeing Jakey Lee with Rat, and knowing at the Troubadour and going, that guy is great. He has just so much charisma. You could just feel it. You could just feel like that guy's going to be a star right there. And he was awesome. And then Ozzy plucked him, and that was a good decision for both of them. And then he went on to do his own thing there. And it was, did they make a follow-up record to that?
They did the Voodoo Highway.
Oh, Voodoo Highway. I remember that.
Yeah, which was a decent record, but it didn't get near the traction of the debut. And I think.
Was that also on Atlantic?
I think so, yeah.
Oh,
wasn't it? Don? I think it was.
I don't remember, but I just remember it tanked. But it's actually a very good record, but it didn't do anything. And yeah, it just seems like even, with both of them, it was that typical record company stuff around that time. There was shady dealings, everyone getting ripped off, labels, new people come in, they're not into this band, so they drop them, they don't support them. And, it's just, Jakey, for whatever reason, probably, things that were beyond his control, never catapulted out of Ozzy to sort of blow up and do his own thing, unfortunately.
Which is a shame. And very similar to the Riot story with Fire Down Under, where, a band that should have been huge, a record that should have been huge, just never got off the ground. And you would think, with Jakey coming out of Ozzy, and, it was like a super group. It was, and it could have, should have, could have, would have, as they say. But Yeah,
and the real bluesy side of Jake's playing on both of the Badlands albums.
Yeah.
You know, because you're really used to hearing him play that 80s Sunset Strip style lead guitar in Ozzy's band, and then here comes a huge blues sound in Badlands. Like, wow, like that's how I want Jake playing.
Right.
A great production too. Paul O'Neill, I think, produced that.
Paul O'Neill, who did the Sabotage record.
Sabotage,
It was amazing. Yeah, did some killer records there, for sure. A Hollow Mountain King is just an awesome record. An incredible album, actually. Yeah. Well, you know, it's Badlands was, you know, is probably one of those secret records that, you know, didn't get enough accolades as it should, but still great album for sure.
Absolutely. John Bush, you're up.
Okay, I think the last record I chose, even though we already talked about UFO, was the first MSG record. So so it's kind of UFO-y, but not. But it was with Schenker, and you know, one of my favorite records. I think at that time, Gary Barden was just one of. I really loved him. I thought he was a great singer. He was a killer follow-up to Phil Mogg, who is one of my favorite singers of all time. But you know, Gary came in, and you know, Schenker was. You didn't have the knowledge of Michael Schenker other than his background in UFO at that time. And then it was kind of a strange record because there wasn't like an official band. You had Simon Phillips playing, but he really wasn't in the band. And then
Mo Foster.
Mo
Foster on bass.
Who did, I think he played on like Jeff Beck's There and Back album, you know? Yeah. And so he was more of a jazzy guy.
And so did Simon Phillips.
And so did Simon Phillips. Yeah. And that's an amazing record. There and Back is an awesome album. Yeah. So it was a trip that he got those guys, and then they never really were in the band after that, because then it got Cozy Powell and Chris Glenn, was it?
Yeah.
Chris Glenn was in the second album. But I mean, I love that album. You know, I love it. You know, Into the Arena is just amazing. Victim of Illusion, Cry for the Nations, you know, Lost Horizons. I mean, that record is just so cool. It has such a cool vibe to it. So that I will finish off with MSG's first album.
All right, Don.
That day, listen, that's a great one. You know, some of it, we're picking some of these deep cuts just in terms of albums too, which I love. And yeah, still my favorite Schenker album to date. And another one where I would tell people, if you really want to get a boner listening to Michael Schenker play guitar, put that record on. That's just, you know, it's in terms of his solo career, that one does it for me still to this day.
I agree, man. A great album, and interesting. You talk about it wasn't like this complete lineup when Michael left UFO, or left Scorpions actually at that time, and did a solo record. He was supposed to get. I interviewed Michael, and he said that he was actually talking to. This is when Aerosmith kind of was falling apart. He actually auditioned for Aerosmith, and he said, you know, admittedly they were both, between him and Steven Tyler, they were both their major drug phases. That never panned out. But then they were going to actually get Tom Hamilton and Joey Kramer to join Michael Schenker group. Wow. Because it was the same. It was David Krebs, that was putting it all together. And he said, why don't, you know, Aerosmith is falling apart. Why don't you get these guys? And I guess then Aerosmith got back together or whatever. So he ended up hiring Mo Foster and Simon Phillips to do the record. But
I've never heard that. That's weird.
Yeah, that was straight out of the mouth of Michael Schenker. So so take it for what it is. But anyway, I mean, it kind of makes sense because the timing would be around that era. But great album. I thought the production was a bit weak. Roger Glover, who produced it, it was kind of a little weak guitar sound, not as powerful as it could have been, but great songs. Armed and Ready, Lost Horizon, it's, you know, kind of got a bit of that Stargazer kind of feel, you know, just a great anthemic, you know, classic. Victim of Illusion, Into the Arena, one of the best instrumentals, and is playing throughout that album is incredible. And again, like you say, Gary Barton, such a great singer, never really had that power live vocals, powerful live vocal, but on that studio record, he sounds amazing. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Am I up? I actually got 2 albums left for some reason. I think we've only got, I'll combine these two. I always go, for my favorite albums of all time. It's always between, kind of Physical Graffiti, Rainbows Rising, and Black Sabbath Sabotage. And it's interesting because all those 3 records, I believe, came out in 1976. Wow. Sabotage might have been 75. I can't recall. I don't have it here handy, but there you go. Oh, that's probably on yours. You know what? I'll let you introduce Sabotage. I'll do Rainbow Rising. And
then you'll do the record that Dio sings on Sabotage.
Did he ever sing a song on Sabotage?
No.
I was thinking even live, I don't think they did. That would have been great to hear Dio sing "Hole in the Sky" or something. I don't think even with Sabbath he ever did a song.
No, he didn't. I wanted to catch you though and see if I caught you.
But I think Ozzy's best vocals are on Sabotage. But anyway, I'll go with Rainbow Rising. I just think it's one of the greatest all-time records. A lot of people say, "Oh man, that album only has 6 songs on it. How could it be so great?" But side 2, Stargazer, A Light in the Black, right there. It just unbelievable. The production from Martin Birch to the performance, Dio, Blackmore, Cozy Powell. I mean, just Jimmy Bain. Just an amazing Tony Carey. Yeah. The opening of Tear It Woman, it just starts out with that keyboard solo, so mystifying, and then it just goes in and to that drum, just so heavy, the intro, and then Dio's vocals come in, and you had the first Rainbow record, which was great, but it was more kind of bluesy. They were kind of finding a direction. This album is like, let's just go balls out. This is like a heavy record, classic metal. Run with the Wolf. I love the backbone beat on that song. Again, just the riff on that, and one of the lead on that guitar solo that fades into the end. Again, talking how Michael Schenker and Phil Mogg did that interplay with guitar, vocal, Ronnie Dio and Blackmore at the end of Run with the Wolf. Just brilliant. Starstruck and Do You Close Your Eyes, probably the 2 weakest songs, but still in their own great songs. They don't really fit that record, so to speak, because you can tell they were more pushed for the radio. But you listen to Starstruck on its own. Great super catchy song. Great vocal hook. Dio lyrics. Sounds great. Great lyrics. Yeah, great lyrics. Yeah. And Do You Close Your Eyes, kind of the same too, but they're kind of forgotten after you hear side 2. Stargazer, greatest metal song ever written, and I'll always go on record to say that. I think the greatest vocal performance by any artist. I'll go, put Paparazzi, put anyone in there. Dio will blow you away on Stargazer. Just unbelievable performance by the whole band. I mean, that is like the perfect song.
I wish Richie would have come around to the idea of the Rainbow thing a little sooner and did it with Ronnie. Yeah. And it's a bummer that never really happened again.
And Cozy.
Yeah. And Cozy.
And Jimmy. He could have got that whole lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that they didn't do that, because that would have been really, really amazing. Because not only is Rising incredible, but so is Long Live Rock and Roll. And then he could even sing songs from like Down to Earth if need be, which is as well, Graham Bonnet. The first album I wasn't as into, believe it or not, but Rising is pivotal in my life. Yeah,
I remember hearing that. And Light in the Black, what a long song. Again, both Stargazer and that, like 8-minute plus songs, but the guitar keyboard interplay kind of reminds me of Deep Purple's Burn. But I think, Tony Carey and Richie Blackmore, what they do on that song. And when Blackmore just comes into that lead, it's just like set up. The keyboards do the solo, then Blackmore comes in and just that mean, nasty strat just comes in. It's just like, it takes you to a whole other level. And, just what can you say? I mean, one of the beginnings of speed metal. That song was very, very fast for that time. 1976, you didn't have anything, I think, as fast as that at that time. As metal and fast. But anyway, I've said enough on that. Go ahead. Comments, Don.
Well, unfortunately, I got to run, so I'll just get my last pick in, which is also your pick.
Yes,
it's Sabotage. It's my favorite Black Sabbath album. It's Jim Florentine's favorite Black Sabbath album. My favorite Black Sabbath song is Thrill of It All. It's a weird, crazy acid trip of an album, Megalomania and The Writ as standouts in terms of those are both 7-minute plus acid trips. Set the music and nothing better than the cover.
It was a one weird cover.
And the back.
I got to tell you a story real quick. That was the first album I ever owned, and it was my 11th birthday. Wow. My mom said you could pick any album. I think they got me for my birthday. They got me David Bowie, Young Americans had just come out. And I remember listening to it, and I was into Bowie. I liked Fame, but the rest of the record I didn't care for. So I returned it. We went to the local Zodi's. I don't know if you remember, that's talking Zodi's. And my mom said, okay, go ahead and pick a record. I remember, is that between that and Physical Graffiti? But that was a double album. That cost too much. So my older cousin turned me on to Sabbath. And he said, you got to get Sabotage. And I showed my mom that album cover, and she just looked at it. Show that album cover again there, Don, with Bill Ward in the red tights and Ozzy in the kimono, as Ozzy used to call it, a homo in a kimono. He said, I look like a homo in a kimono, he said in one quote. But what my mom just looked at that album, and she just knew from then on. She's going, okay, my son, that's it. It's over.
A lot of hallucinogens in the making of this album, no doubt. So,
absolutely.
Well, Symptom of the Universe, it's classic. So
it was good seeing you both. And
you too, man. This was fun. This was great.
Absolutely. I'm sorry we couldn't carry on. What was I thinking doing 10 records? We'll do a continuation of this. We did some good stuff. But to be continued. Thank you both. I know you guys got to jump here. Thank you both for coming on. Real quick, give your the information on how do people can tune into That Jamieson Show. Yeah,
we put the episodes go up for subscribers first, but then you can find them on YouTube after they've aired on Compound Media. You can find us there and get a day pass or sign up, or like I said, just go into YouTube, type in That Jamieson Show, and you'll see a lot of great interviews on there. Like I said, including Mr. John Bush himself. And I gotta get you on to talk about some rock and roll too. So
I would love it.
Nalbandian coming soon.
Yes.
Very cool. And John Book, we got armoredsaint.com. Is that our Metal Blade?
For sure. ArmoredSaint.com is a great place to go, and Metal Blade is kind of revamped our website, and it looks very professional, and it's very organized, and we're grateful to them that they did a great job with it. So check it out and stay in the know with the Saint.
Please, I don't.
Very cool. Well, I know you got to jump too. Don already jumped. Sorry for keeping you guys on so long, but
that's all right, Rod. It was a lot of fun.
We'll do it again soon. All right, John Book.
Bye, Bob.
All right, have a good one. Man.